I have no idea if y'all can see that, but I'm wearing my X-Men shirt today. It look old, I don't care. Today we about to watch that brand new X97 Season 2 trailer. Check it out.
It's hard to believe what's not waiting for me. Someone I lost. Someone special.
The X-Men are scattered through time. In the past, from the start of Apocalypse's reign, to the future at the height of his rule.
The X-Men. I must strike them at their most vulnerable. The night.
Yo, I don't know if anybody who's watching this knows about the game X-Men Legends 2. It's the whole run through of Apocalypse era. It's crazy. It's dumb old, I ain't gonna lie. It came out like 2005 or something, before all the Ultimate Alliance games came out. Yeah, that pretty much taught me the whole storyline behind the Apocalypse character and stuff like that. So I kind of get what's going on, but they might put their little twist on it. Let's see.
1990s.
Jeez, could have at least bought me a drink first.
I had it for GameCube. Yeah, I'm Nintendo.
We gotta get the X-Men back to the 90s.
You fight a battle that cannot be won. Against the dawn of an age that cannot be stopped.
To the 90s.
You fight a battle that cannot be won. Against the dawn of an age that cannot be stopped.
This isn't just about us. It's about everyone we've lost.
From the beginning of time to the reaches of tomorrow.
What?
It's about everyone we've lost.
From the beginning of time to the reaches of tomorrow. We stand together, right here, right now. I believe in the X-Men.
First, y'all.
We're back, baby.
Yo, yeah, like I said, I played X-Men Legends 2. Oh, hold on. And it goes through it tells you really about the whole Apocalypse character, all the Horsemen and stuff like that. Like I said, I played it for GameCube, and so I kind of know what's going on, but I don't know. They put in their own little. They might be doing a little bit different here. You feel me? I've been an X-Men fan since I was a kid. My first favorite from the team was Wolverine, of course. Then you had Nightcrawler, and then I watched the show, the cartoons. Then I had people like Jubilee, of course. I liked her a lot, and you got to say Storm, bro. Yeah, I love that trailer. I rock with that trailer. That's crazy. But you know we got to watch the breakdown, right? Because it seemed like there was a lot going on. So let's tune into the breakdown from Screen Crush and see what we missed. So now, so I didn't know I wasn't screen recording the video on my phone. So I just watched the whole breakdown video for no reason. I have to watch it again now. Hopefully it doesn't mess up again, y'all.
Back Screen Crush, I'm Ryan
Great.
Airy. So the new trailer for X-Men 97 teases a story that happens in 3 different timelines, which are all pulled from various eras of the X-Men comics. That is one thing I love about this show. It's like taking all of the best eras of X-Men, but remixing them into one story.
But that last show was so long ago, I don't even remember it.
Well, let me give you a quick recap on how Season 1 ended. It did release 2 years ago, and frankly, we're all different
It's been a
people
while, I
since
ain't
then.
even
This
know.
show is a continuation of the 90s X-Men animated series. Now, the show was a landmark event for Saturday morning cartoons because it featured mature subject matter like racism, genocide, and teen drama.
Why is this happening to me? I used to be a normal kid. It's not my fault.
That show ended with Charles Xavier nearly dying from an assassination attempt and then going off into space to be healed by Shi'ar aliens. Afterwards, the people of Earth believe he is dead, and this sparks a lot of pro-mutant feelings. So a year after the series finale, Magneto shows up at the X-Mansion to announce that the professor asked him to run the school in his absence. Then Scott and Jean announce that they are going to leave the team to have their baby, but it turns out that Jean is actually a clone named Madeline, who briefly goes insane. Then the real Jean is awakened from Mr. Sinister's slumber pod, and Scott then has to send his baby to the future to save the child's life. Then the mutants unite on the island of Genosha to form their own nation, but they are massacred by Sentinels. Cable tries to change the timeline, but has to accept that the Genosha massacre is an absolute point in time that can never be altered. Gambit dies in the attack and Magneto is presumed dead, but in fact the experience has actually radicalized him. Charles then returns to Earth and it's revealed that the villain behind everything is Bastion, a self-hating mutant who wants to turn the entire human race into Sentinels. Cable says that in the future, Bastion becomes successful and creates a world where the mutant race has been wiped out. Then Magneto rebuilds his asteroid base and the X-Men Sunspot and Rogue join his team. Then the X-Men mount an attack on the asteroid where Eric rips the adamantium from Wolverine's body. Then Xavier takes control of his friend's mind, but this fractures his psyche. Then Jean uses the Phoenix Force to defeat Bastion and stop humans from becoming Sentinels. As the asteroid plummets to Earth, it explodes and the X-Men are presumed dead. But then 6 months later, the time traveler Bishop arrives and tells Forge that the X-Men are actually lost in time. Now, this goes back to a very important arc from the original series that I'll go over in just a bit. We see that Scott and Jean are, in fact, in the 40th century, where they made a teenage version of Cable, who is actually their infant son, Nathan. Beast, Nightcrawler, Rogue, Xavier, and Magneto are in ancient Egypt when they encounter a younger version of the villain Apocalypse. And in the present day, Apocalypse finds one of Gambit's playing cards in the rebels of Genosha. Now, behind the scenes, there was a lot of drama this season, with Marvel firing the showrunner of Season 1, Bo DeMaio, and replacing him with Matthew Chauncey, the showrunner for What If Season 3. Now, DeMaio reportedly wrote all the scripts for Season 2, but they could have been altered after he was fired.
Hey, person, can you take over for me?
Someone yanked our friends through time, and now we gotta go rescue the X-Men.
Later in the trailer, we do see Forge and Bishop in front of a time portal. Now, in Bishop's future, Forge created the time machine that originally sent Bishop back to the past for the storyline Days of Future Past. So it makes sense that he would travel to the 90s to get Forge's help to rebuild the time portal.
Why doesn't he just use the portal from the future?
Well, maybe there's a rule that says you always bounce back to the era the time portal was created. So Bishop needs for there to be a portal in the 90s in order to rescue the X-Men. Now, the trailer starts off by reminding us of the tragic events of last season, with Rogue still mourning Gambit. Remember, last season she was so heartbroken about losing him that she defected and joined Magneto's side. This shot is Jubilee, I think, handing her one of Gambit's playing cards. Now, when Apocalypse found this same card at the end of last season, it was a post-credit scene that seemed to foreshadow that Gambit would return as a Horseman of Apocalypse, just like in the comics. In fact, maybe Jubilee recovered this card from a battle and it's being presented to Rogue as proof that Gambit has returned. Rogue flashes back to last season when she was with Gambit at the Genosha Market, on the basketball court, and she stares into a fire as we go to the Marvel Animation logo. It begins with the 1960 Spider-Man series and then Zombie Wanda.
Yo, if y'all haven't watched any of the other shows, if anybody watching me who never did, please go to it.
And finally, Gambit riding Wolverine during the final battle in Remember It, which is the best episode of Marvel TV ever made. And then we see Magneto and the X-Men in ancient Egypt. Now remember, last season, Magneto led the team very briefly before declaring war on humanity. Now last season ended with Xavier going into Eric's mind and basically having a really deep therapy session with him. So maybe now Magneto is truly an ally to the X-Men. He's also ditched his villain outfit in favor of a tunic without a logo. This is similar to how he dressed in the graphic novel God Loves Loves, Man Kills, where he teamed up with the X-Men. In fact, the movie X2, X-Men United, is heavily based on that comic. Now they are walking through an ancient temple where some kind of force blows out this torch, and then we see them in this Egyptian temple surrounded by futuristic technology, like these robots that we see later littered on a battlefield beneath the feet of Apocalypse. So this is all an adaptation of the comic book, The Rise of Apocalypse. In that comic, we see the young mutant Eb Sabanur, aka Apocalypse, going to war against the forces of Rama-Tut, who we also see here.
Wait, who's Rama-Tut?
Well, Rama-Tut is a time traveler from the distant future who time traveled into the past to conquer Egypt. And get this, he is a younger version of Kang the Conqueror, and he even appeared in Quantum Mania. So this is, for me, kind of huge for a couple reasons. One, we already saw a version of Kang in this universe in the Season 4 arc Beyond Good and Evil. That's when Apocalypse established this fortress at the nexus of time and space to conquer all of reality at once. And he is stopped by the X-Men and Cable and Bishop. Now, all through the arc, Bishop was guided by this weird little guy who turned out to be Immortus in disguise. And Immortus is the older version of Kang the Conqueror. And the second reason I love this Rama-Tut reveal is because it further connects this show to the multiverse saga. In Season 1, remember, we saw the Watcher presiding over the destruction of Genosha, just like we saw him watch canon events in the show What If and in Daredevil Born Again. But at this point in the multiverse saga, there are thousands of variants of Kang the Conqueror who are running around the multiverse. The large dome from the end of Season 1 even looks like that same technology we saw Kang use in Quantum Mania. Remember, at the end of Season 1, the X-Men appeared in ancient Egypt and fought off some of the Pharaoh's forces, and then they aided a young Apocalypse who was also fighting against the Pharaoh. So it seems like the X-Men are very much part of his growing resistance, where it's going to be Apocalypse against Rama-Tut. It could even be that they are helping him out because they want to reform Apocalypse, so maybe he doesn't become a genocidal monster in the future. Now here, they could actually be inside the Sphinx, which in the comics is Rama-Tut's time machine. Later in the trailer, we see what looks like Xavier standing in front of the Sphinx. I think here he's having a vision after maybe touching Apocalypse's mind. He sees the Sphinx in the past, and then cuts to the future, when it's reshaped in Apocalypse's image and the ground is littered with bodies. And then we see Scott and Jean riding a bull with teenage Nathan. So this future storyline seems like it's adapted from the comic book The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix. In that book, Scott and Jean inhabited bodies of two people in the distant future where they were able to raise young Nathan, and they called themselves Slim and Red. They joined the Ascani clan led by Mother Ascani, who we saw in the final moments of Season 1.
You may call me Mother Ascani, leader of Clan Ascani.
And side note, Mother Ascani is actually a future version of Rachel Summers. This is Scott and Jean's daughter from an alternate reality who travels into the past to join the X-Men and later join the Team Excalibur. And notice that Cyclops is wearing a blue uniform with a white X. This is what he wore as the leader of the Team X-Factor in the 80s and 90s. TLDR there is that he and the original X-Men created an organization that were disguised as mutant hunters who were actually finding wayward mutant youths and training them. Then when the 5 of them rejoined the X-Men, X-Factor became a government-controlled agency, like we saw in the original animated series, but more on them in a bit. And guys, I just want to take a second to remind you that we have X-Men parody merch at our merch store, including this, and if you become a skip. Now this actually looks like the alien ship that Apocalypse commandeered in the comics. He used this advanced technology on the ship to recreate his body and essentially make himself functionally immortal. It could also be the same here, except he steals the ship from Rama-Tut. Notice it blasts the dome, and below we see it create a black hole. Just like we saw on the show Loki, black holes are gateways into different timelines. Ouroboros also explains the time loom exploding is like a black hole.
Have you heard about how if you fall into a black hole, you turn into spaghetti?
No.
I bring this up because look at this horse flying overhead. It turns to spaghetti. We've seen this effect many times before. For instance, all the Scott variants in Quantum Mania turned into spaghetti when they approached the Singularity Drive. And we also saw a similar effect in Season 2 of Loki when universes died. And it's also what we see an incursion look like in the Multiverse of Madness. So I think this is an attack from the ship that is causing an incursion or maybe some other rift in time. And then we finally get the return of the big man himself, Apocalypse, who wants to strike the X-Men at their most vulnerable point in time.
The 1990s.
To be honest, I shared that with the X-Men. I was also very vulnerable in the 90s.
You look like Logic.
cast from last season is returning, and Apocalypse is voiced by Ross Marquand, who also does the voice for Professor X and also plays the Red Skull in the MCU. And then we see Polaris.
Who's that?
Well, in the comics, she and Cyclops' brother Havoc were the first 2 members of the X-Team to join after the original 5. She has magnetic powers like Magneto, and for a while, she even believed that she was his daughter. Or like maybe now she is his daughter in the comics. It's
Polaris
kind of
is
hard to
pretty
keep
dope.
track. They keep changing it.
These timelines are so confusing.
Now she enters what looks like a room in the X-Mansion. Notice that it's being cleaned up. Like we saw last season, the mansion was run down 6 months after the X-Men disappeared. So, after they return from different time periods, maybe they start to rebuild the mansion and reform the team. Then Lorna sees a photo of herself with her ex, Bobby Drake, aka Iceman. In an episode of the original series, Bobby tracked down Lorna and discovered that she'd been working for the government. Lorna revealed that she has now seen Havoc, Cyclops' brother, who leads the team X-Factor. Notice there's also a photo of Polaris with Jean and Storm, and this is next to a photo showing her with the original team, meaning that she joined the team as the 6th member, probably without Havoc. They're all wearing their 2nd generation suits from the comics after they graduated from the blue and gold uniforms, and Polaris is also wearing her original suit. Then we see Wolverine on the blackboard with Morph, and he is again wearing the classic brown and orange suit that he wore at the end of last season. So, how did he get his metal claws back? Last season ended with Magneto ripping out Wolverine's adamantium, and he was near death in the medical bay. Morph then turned into Jean and confessed his true feelings for him.
I love you, Logan. Stay with me.
But we didn't see where Wolverine reappeared in the timeline, and Forge's board confirms that he is missing and presumed dead. And then we see Jean and Scott wearing the iconic black and yellow jackets from the Grant Morrison Frank Quitely run of New X-Men. This was a soft reboot of the team that began with X-Men issue 114. This run gave us the Genosha Massacre that was adapted in season 1, and a huge new cast of teenagers who are being taught by the X-Men. More on them later. So Jean is using her powers to create psionic claws that look just like Wolverine's, and these are similar to the psionic blade that the telepath Psylocke can create. Now it looks like she's helping Scott to scatter his eye blast in a disrupted pattern, maybe to hit smaller targets with greater accuracy. And she would know where to place the claws because she is connected to Scott's mind with the telepathic link. But it's interesting that she manifests Wolverine's claws, which hints that she does indeed have feelings for him, or at least he's always on her mind. And then we see Sunspot in his classic 90s suit flying through the air and flinging Jubilee into an attack. Now last season, the two of them were still in the 90s, but Forge's board listed them as missing in action. So they're still active, but they're not communicating with Forge. And then we see Bishop, disguised in ancient Egypt, fighting off Ramatut's forces along with Nightcrawler. I love how they turn the X-Men theme into this big, operatic musical moment.
They know I'm out here, I swear.
And then we see Nathan, aka Young Cable, in the future with Mother Ascani, and I believe this is Storm. She is wearing the blue and gold suit that she wore briefly in the comics at the very end of the Chris Claremont run. We also see her flying and flinging flames around her, and then we cut to the Genosha Massacre. So I'm wondering, could this be in the future, or are the X-Men somehow able to reverse the events of Genosha? Last season, Cable tried to do this, but then he said the event was an absolute point in time.
Events that occur across all timelines.
Here, it looks like Nathan is reaching into a time machine, which then cuts to Cable watching a next generation of Sentinels attacking, which we see more of a little bit later in the trailer. And then we see Colossus in the ashes of a city that is littered with Sentinels, and this could be in the aftermath of Genosha. Later in the trailer, we see a shrine to his sister Ilyana, the mutant called Magic with a K. Now, in the comics, her death
I love Magic, so that just broke my heart a little bit. I wonder if she's gonna come back in some alternate form, I don't know, but that sucks.
Led to Colossus joining Magneto's acolytes like Rogue did last season. And when Colossus visits this shrine, it looks like it's in the X-Mansion as a tribute to all the people they lost. He is wearing his acolyte garb from the comics, which he wore after he defected to Magneto's team, making me think that her death also drove him to join Magneto's side in the series.
I thought Magneto was a good guy.
Well, later in the trailer, we do see Nightcrawler fighting Exodus, who we also briefly saw in Genosha last season. Exodus was one of the leaders of the acolytes in Magneto's absence, and I think that that after Magneto disappeared, Exodus likely continued to lead the team, spreading Magneto's anti-human propaganda. And this is very exciting, because the Room became sentient and turned on the X-Men, and it's possible that in the show she creates a new breed of Sentinels that we see in this shot. They are attacking a futuristic building called X-Corps, and this is taken from the recent brilliant run of the comics called the House of X storyline. Basically, all the mutants band together to form an independent nation, and they created a corporation to sell miracle drugs to humans. This story also flashes forward hundreds and thousands of years into the future to show how Sentinels slowly overtake mutants first and then overtake mankind. And it looks like Danger could be leading this charge to conquer the world. And maybe this fight is taking place in the distant future when Apocalypse is trying to conquer the planet. Then Cable polishes up his gun and sees his parents in their Grant Morrison costumes. Last season, he was happily reunited with them and embraced them as his parents. And we also get to see a happy moment between young Nathan and Scott and Jean here. And then we go to the action-heavy part of the trailer. Jubilee is trapped behind a force field, crying as someone close to her is presumably killed. This is the Professor falling through a kind of limbo that could be the nexus of all realities. That's the world between worlds that Apocalypse used in the final arc of Season 4. This is probably part of the vision in the trailer that we talked about earlier. And then we see hieroglyphics of the X-Men beneath Apocalypse, implying that they helped him to rise to power, which leads to this hieroglyphic of fully formed Apocalypse engraved in stone. And notice the circular design around them, similar to the time drive that Kang the Conqueror used in Quantum Mania. Again, I think that Apocalypse used Ramatut/Kang's technology to conquer the world. Now, here's a T-Rex, which could be from time traveling or a visit to the Savage Land in Antarctica. We see Morph facing off against what I think is a brood alien, and notice he turns into Deadpool to fight it. And then we see Warren Worthington III, aka Archangel, firing his metallic darts in a complex that looks like it takes place in the present day. Archangel is basically vital for any story that involves Apocalypse. Yeah. The villain first appeared in the pages of X-Factor shortly after Warren lost his wings. Apocalypse said he could regrow them, but instead he turned Warren into his horseman called Death. Now, Warren overcame the brainwashing and changed his hero name to Archangel, and afterwards for years had a much harder edge. Now, a similar story with...
Please go play that. It's so fire.
Repeated in the original animated series, with Apocalypse claiming that he could give Warren a mutant cure to take away his powers, but instead this turned him into his servant. Then, in the Good and Evil arc from Season 4, Archangel is still seeking revenge against Apocalypse. Now, in the Good and Evil arc of the original show, Archangel and Psylocke teamed up to fight Apocalypse, and the original plan was for them to join the team at the end of the season, but then the series was renewed for a final 5th season,
I think
so those
I actually might have
Here, Rogue is wearing a suit from the Morrison era and struggling to enter what might be a time portal in the mouth of a statue of Apocalypse. We flash to several characters from this season, including Magneto, sporting 3 scars across his face, which is probably Wolverine getting payback for what he did to him at the end of last season. Now, all through this section, Nightcrawler is giving a pep talk. He hugs Rogue because the two of them are kind of siblings. Mystique raised Rogue, and she is Nightcrawler's biological mother. And notice later, we see him wearing his priest collar, and like we saw in the original show, he lives a life as a holy man. In fact, he even got Wolverine to pray.
I will trust and will not be afraid.
Next, we see a group of young mutants, including Quentin Quire, who is featured in one of my favorite X-Men runs called Riot at Xavier's. This is from that Grant Morrison run of comics. Quire is an Omega-level telepath who can use his abilities to control others. In the Riot storyline, he's
yeah, like we live next to whatever you call it, and they got like training classes, something like that. I don't know. Yep. Anyway.
starts taking the drug mutant growth hormone, which augments his powers and makes him go a little crazy. And so he forms a rebellion at the school who declares that Magneto was right. This is Penance and Chamber from the Team Generation X, and the person in the center is your mom. After a huge group shot of the entire roster we've already talked about, we get this recreation of the classic cover to Wolverine Volume 1, Issue 1 by Frank Miller and Chris Claremont.
We're back, baby.
Well guys, that's all the Easter eggs we found, but if you found any, let me know in the comments below or on our free to join Discord server. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.
Yo, well, that's the X-Men trailer. Hold on. Season 2 trailer. If y'all rocking with it, let me know in the comments. Like I said, I got my shirt on, you feel me? Yep. Anyway, if any X-Men fans are watching this, let me know your top 5 X-Men. Put them in the comments. Let me know. My favorites got to be, like I said, Wolverine, Nightcrawler, Storm, Magic, and Psylocke, for sure. Yeah, thank you for anybody tuning in, watching the trailer with me. And I'll be back next time.